There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter. My guest today, Manish Mahatme, Director Payments on WhatsApp India, and we are going to talk about the success of digital payments in India, payments on WhatsApp, much more. Blockbuster episode. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after this short break.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.
And welcome back. Manish, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thanks, Anupam. Very glad to be here and love to catch up on this wonderful space that I'm very fortunate to be part of, which is payments and fintech in India. So thanks once again.
Oh, thank you, because this is the first time we're covering payments in such detail, and that also with such a big player such as yourself. So let's start with your views on the now very famous. It's called the India Stack. If you're globally into fintech, then you will know India. It's called the India Stack, and the India Stack's role in financial inclusion in India. Your views on that, and where are we going with this? What's your vision of the future?
Absolutely. So India Stack has been very successful in being able to link an individual to the country's fintech and digital payments ecosystem, right? And just for some of your younger viewers, what is India Stack, right? It's a set of open APIs and digital assets that can unlock multiple different areas, whether it is identity, data, payments, and in future even commerce, right? And so that's think about it in this way, right? Think of it as a railroad on which you could build multiple different trains delivering services to citizens across the country. It allows you to connect your identity, payments, and in future commerce, right? What it has helped with is it has helped fast forward the pace of financial literacy. And the first example of that is UPI, right? Just the way that it's been able to scale and provide access to digital payments, and digital payments actually in turn unlocks multiple other things. Like you could be sitting in a remote village today and get access to goods and services from any place. A very interesting example. A few weeks ago, I was in remote MP, right, and there's this tehsil called Shapura, and it's a feeder market, and people from villages come and transact and on this weekly thing, and the shopkeepers there were amazed because some of the users now are accessing information and getting access to the latest trends, etc., and using UPI. So it's amazing how it's reaching sort of the far corners of the country. And what really excites me about the India Stack is that it unlocks innovation at our national scale, right? So, for example, somebody sitting in a remote corner of the Northeast might have an idea. And India Stack allows you to take that to users even at a very hyper local level, right? That's what excites me a lot. It's as I said earlier, it's like this railroad, right? And it's some completely in line with what our vision for WhatsApp Pay is, right? We first of all we've built our payments feature on UPI, and second, we also see ourselves as an unlocker of economic activity across the country, right? And how we can contribute to get sort of the next 200-400 million users into the digital payment space.
Okay. Let's talk about UPI, right? Because UPI is now what, some $100 billion per month, which was probably zero 5, 10 years ago. And while that kind of scale looks awesome, right? Alipay in China has shown that even more is possible. So do you think digital payments, China, India are even comparable?
It's an interesting question, Anupam. I think there are some similarities, and then there are some things where I think so. It may not be a completely apples to apples comparison, but if you look at a lot of recent reports, right, India seems to be far ahead of China in financial inclusion metrics and in terms of real-time online transactions and digital payments, etc. But I don't think it's a the piece where as an industry or payments we need to focus on. It's not necessarily only about comparing. I think both markets have traditionally been cash led, right? And the larger task is how do you digitize a lot of the commerce and payments and move more users to the fold of digital payments. And in that sense, I think UPI has been one of the most successful financial innovations, right? It's become a case study. It's being discussed across the globe by multiple regulators, on how to create a payment system that can provide that kind of sort of democratized and open access. And what it's done is create a very frictionless way to onboard, transact, and also created a safe space for people to adopt digital payments. Right. Very interestingly, for example, whenever a user transacts for the first time on commerce, right, 80% of them till date, even today, choose cash because they are not very comfortable, but that's what UPI also solves for. Right? At this scale, it's been able to create a very safe and trusted space for people to transact financially. And I think that's been sort of the success story, and that's how that's why we love it, right? And where we see WhatsApp contributing is that we really think it can be a game changer. And I said, the task for us is to what will it take to get the next 200 300 million digital payments users over the next 3 to 4 years, right? And we see ourselves playing a big role. And we what UPI has been able to achieve, right? The simplicity, the trust, the safety, and this is something that we have been traditionally super good at, right? And our users trust us with the simplicity that we offer, and the fact that it can be accessible from anywhere and under multiple different network types, etc. And that's where we see ourselves playing a huge role.
So what's going to be next for UPI in India? We've already had so much of growth so far. I mentioned the $100 billion per month. What's next for UPI in India from here on?
Yeah, just to clarify, and I think UPI already has been an unquestioned success, right? There is no doubt about the scale that it has achieved with the kind of users that it's reached out to, and how it has actually now got ingrained into our daily lives. Interestingly, in the last 4 to 5 years, and this is purely my observation, working and traveling around meeting small merchants, it used to be in the 2 to 3 out of 100 transactions used to be digital, right? Because most was cash, and that the change problem never existed. And now that number has jumped manifold, and so it is already an unquestioned success. But we are also, this is the best time to be alive, right? We are also part of this amazing transformation that's happening, and this country is getting built, and it'll get built only once, right? So what a great time to be part of the sort of the payments journey for India. I think there are 2 3 things that are looking very interesting. The first is just the depth of use cases, right? As UPI, people try UPI and they start making digital payments and they get comfortable. It's proven that after a certain number of transactions, users start trying more complex transactions. So let me give an example. So I think subscriptions and whether it's a subscription for a pack or subscription for your mobile payment, or so subscription based payments seems to be like one space that definitely where depth of use cases and depth of usage will come through. The second, and some of it has already started, like for example, there is this amazing feature called one-time mandate where you can pay for a IPO, but then now the merchant ecosystem is going to innovate on this, right? So for example, if you have one-time mandate, you're not comfortable paying digitally, you can, and you want to choose cash, you don't actually have to pay at that point, but you can actually start paying on delivery. So some of these use cases will start coming through. The second, I think, is around new segments, right? I think there is a large part of the country that still hasn't taken up digital payments yet. And for example, today, a majority of users, one of their first digital experiences is using WhatsApp, right? Like that, one of their first digital payments or consumption experience is definitely going to be UPI as it goes to tier 2, tier 3 and rural markets. So that's this, I think, the second bucket of new segments adopting UPI. And the third, I think, is that commerce as we know it today is going to go through a massive transformation, right? It is going to get democratized. It is the access for commerce is going to increase manifold, and the number of people participating in commerce is going to increase. Interestingly, India has a very sharp head selection, right? So the top merchants contribute to a large part of digital consumption in India, but that's going to change. So India is now going to get into that phase where the torso and the tail of merchants and businesses doing digital businesses will come through. And I think that's where the role that UPI plays in that commerce part on building the torso and tail, which is a real sense of how the economy grows, right? With the smaller businesses and SMBs coming in. So I think that's going to be a super part where UPI is going to play a huge role. So those are sort of three things that come to mind. And one of the things that we believe is this, the role that UPI and specifically us as WhatsApp Pay can play in bringing some of these newer segments, right? So a couple of months ago, we started this pilot, adopting 500 villages in the Mandya district. And so what we're doing is actually going out into the villages, learning from users, what will it take? So these are users who've never done a digital payment, right? Cash income, cash spends, right? So what does it take to adopt a digital payment? Which use cases work for them? So what drives sort of some of those conveniences? We are learning, right? And there is so much more work to be done, and it's not only restricted to just making a payment, right? Like how does money go into the account? So driving that view. So many things we are learning, and as I think we will continue to scale and watch and learn that space.
And on that note, let's take a small break. On the other side, we're going to talk about UPI and, of course, payments on WhatsApp, India's plans for India. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. My guest, Manish Mahatme, Director, Payments on WhatsApp, India.
Ladies, I'm sure you will relate to it if I say that we are constantly busy with work, studies, cooking, and what not. And amidst all of this, we often forget an important element that needs our desperate attention: finance. So here we are, bringing to you SBI Life Presents A Sip of Finance, a women-exclusive podcast where we will teach you how to manage personal finances in a simple and straightforward way with your host, Priyanka Acharya, a finance expert who's been in the industry for 14 plus years. And not just in English, but in 7 more languages. So tune in every Tuesday for fresh episodes on the IBM Podcast Network and all major podcast streaming platforms.
And welcome back. Manish, UPI is limited to smartphones, and although the base of smartphones is now fairly large in India, probably among, the top 3 or top 5 in the world, how do you plan to expand the size of access to financial services at the bottom of the pyramid? I mean, one example that you just gave was how you've adopted some 500 villages. So let's go deep into this. How do you plan to expand the size of access to financial services at the bottom of the pyramid?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one part to think about, right? Like, let's take the example of smartphones, or the point about smartphones that you mentioned. There is significant headroom within the smartphone segment itself today, right? And it's let's take, like, for example, today there are 600 million plus smartphones, right? And they are using some form of digital service, right? And the first question, therefore, I think needs to be examined is what will it take to first go and capture that segment, and that definitely has to be about democratizing use cases, driving awareness and literacy, and giving users comfort, and that digital payments, what value does it add to their life, as well as how safe it is, right? So there is a lot of work to be done even within the smartphone segment. There are also multiple other features or enablers, I would say, that would help drive this access. And this is not only about literacy or use cases, right? For example, as you get to more remote areas, access to patchy, I mean, strong networks could become an issue, right? And I know that there are initiatives currently underway and explorations happening where can it work in a very low network or signal or data environment. So there are multiple other enablers also that help towards that cause. Then the second part of this, I would say, is can we do anything to extend this to users beyond the smartphone phase, right? And that is to some extent today, financial services does sort of reach those segments in a slightly different way. And so for example, today there Jandan accounts get sort of any credits, and you don't actually need to use a smartphone. So to your question on access to digital financial services, is it restricted to smartphones? The answer is no. Even today there are multiple attempts being made, and I think some of them supremely successful, because just look at the way subsidies are being transferred, right? Just the amount of leakage that used to exist before, and versus now people actually getting those credits. So that's been super transformational.
Do you think that you will need partnerships, say with, I don't know, governments, for example, to widen access? We spoke about networks, telecom networks, spoke about smartphones. What's the role of regulation or advocacy out here from the government side?
Absolutely. I think the NPCI has done a phenomenal job, to get us to this point, right, and scale UPI across the country. And um, we are very, very happy to support in whichever way, both NPCI and the RBI to accelerate this adoption. As I said, we've started in our own measure on some of the initiatives, right? Because we know that in urban markets this is something that is well understood, well used, etc. Can we go out there and make users or customers jump that barrier of just discomfort or inertia, right? So we are learning so much, and that's one. But and I think that the industry, along with NPCI and the government, right, will definitely have to come together. And I know that this is being done across multiple forums. For example, there's an industry body for payments that's working very closely, and we're keenly participating. So a lot of it is coming, and the one good thing that excites us about what's happening in this space right now is that across the board there is super clarity and super intent, both come together, right? And a very inclusive way of doing this, and how the industry can come together and contribute. So I think that gives me a lot of confidence, that some of these partnerships and some of these engagements are going super strong.
Right. So last couple of questions specific to payments on WhatsApp India, Manish. So in many interviews you've spoken about India first features. I like the term, I like the sound of that. What are these, and how will you expand on them in the future? What can users like myself look forward to?
Yeah. So I think it's becoming very clear that India is becoming the test bed for the world, right? It's the most, and why, right? It provides the most interesting user or customer challenge, right? We as customers, we demand the best. I think that's a super place for, say, a product manager to invest his or her time, right? And the second is that there are so many Indias and so many segments, and so there's so very unique differences between what different segments would demand or need, and therefore we we spoke to users, right? We understood, hey, they're looking for a way to pay where they are, right? And so some of these insights, and just a couple of examples, right? The first is that we realized that people are chatting, and they're chatting all the time, and so where are they, right? Let's go where users are, and users are chatting with each other and saying anytime you want to just send money, so we put the sort of the rupee symbol right in chat, right? So you can just click on that and it initiates a payment. You don't have to actually go and say I want to pay, or go, so right where you chat, where you spend the most amount of time on the app, we put payments right there. So that's one example. The second example is that we know that when users spend, right, a large part of their spends are actually at stores. So what's the best way of paying in a store rather than going and opening up an app? So when you unlock an app, it's likely that WhatsApp, figures somewhere in your last recent most used apps, right? So we put the QR code scanner on the main camera of WhatsApp. So these are just examples of a couple of innovations that we've that have been India led, right? India first, and they're serving as sort of good benchmarks for us to learn at a global level. And there are some more unique sort of features that may not be huge drivers of payments, but how can we make payments a little bit interesting from the sort of the boring category? Nobody likes to make a payment, right? We just like to buy something, or so we added some very localized sort of stickers and backgrounds, etc., so we can make the sort of the chat experience while paying a little bit more fun, right? And so that continues, by the way. A lot of our work and roadmap continues to be defined by what users are saying here. And we are proud to say this, and I say this again: India will be a test bed for the rest of the world.
That sounds really exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Last question, Manish, the big one. I'm definitely, at the risk of repeating myself again, looking forward to this as well. How does payments on WhatsApp fit into the overall metaverse? Because we know that's the future. How does this payments piece fit into this overall metaverse?
Sure. So we believe social experiences will be at the heart of metaverse, right? And when we talk about the metaverse, what we are talking about is a future where people are at the heart of technology, right? We will continue to explore as we learn more on how payments on WhatsApp can be built and can evolve under that vision of that metaverse. Now, currently, our goal for payments on WhatsApp is to continue to be aligned with RBI's vision, which is to drive financial inclusion through awareness, accessibility, and affordability. So the focus for us over the next few months and quarters is, can we drive awareness of our payments features, as well as launch some features for newer segments, etc. And that's what we continue to focus on. Our approach is, can we democratize access to payments that unlock sort of commerce in India at national scale, right? We believe we can really ease people's lives and enable this financial inclusion by just removing barriers. We are there. People trust us, and we can contribute to the next 100, 200, 400 million users to digital payments in India.
Fantastic. And with that, folks, that is a wrap on this episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest, Manish Mahatme, Director Payments on WhatsApp India. Manish, thank you. Really, thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Absolutely happy to be here. And thanks once again, Anupam, and to the whole team.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manish. And listeners, if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm your host, Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter. And thank you so much for listening to Paisa Vaisa.
No material on this show should be considered as financial advice. The material on this show is for informational purposes only. Please consult a financial advisor before taking any investment decision.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cock and Bull on Cyrus Says, Cyrus talks to Gauri Devi Dayal, host of This Round Is On Me, along with Abbas Momin and Antariksh. They congratulate Gauri on the fact that her restaurant The Table made it to the top 50 restaurants in Asia, and discuss the Oscars debacle over Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam introduces us to Anubhav Jain, CEO and co-founder at Rupify. They unravel how the BNPL service is solving SMEs' cash flow. On the Filter Coffee podcast, Karthik talks to Pamela Kale Malhotra, co-founder and trustee of the Sai Sanctuary. Karthik asks her how a girl from New Jersey grew up with the dream of starting a wildlife sanctuary. On Tere Mere Raste, Kesho takes us on a trip to the land of Buddhist monks and Danny Denzongpa, Gang Talk. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina talks about developing 4 must-have qualities for a better life. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you might be listening to us on. And do check us out on YouTube. We're building a whole bunch of different channels. You can find them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And we're also doing a small listener survey, which we would really appreciate your help with. It helps us kind of talk to advertisers. So you could go to ivmpodcast.com/survey. It'll just take a couple of minutes and it would be really helpful to us. We do appreciate this. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance and the India Water Portal. Thank you so much for making this possible.